So, welcome to today's C Suite Support Council meeting. I'm Trisha Bannon, the CEO of C Suite Network. And of course, I have the incredible honor of introducing none other than Paul Whitley. He's one of our hero leaders, family friend, of course, and the chair of the C Suite Support Council. He is a fractional CFO with a mission to help businesses grow exponentially and has an extensive amount of experience in really seeing the CEOs and financial executives that he's working with move forward successfully and get to their actual goals. And there are so many other things that Paul does. I don't know. I could list forever, Paul, but I know we have some great content today. So I'm going to hand things over, and of course, with great gratitude for you to get us started for today.
Thank you, Tricia, and I appreciate that. Today, we have the honor of having a gentleman named Jonathan Bates, and I use that term loosely. He's a new friend, but becoming a good friend. So we're talking about how to advance the veterans and their livelihood and their ability. So that is one of the primary things that's a driver for many of us. And Jonathan is one of those guys that disarmed bombs when he was playing in the military, if you can call that playing. So now he's moving from disarming bombs to building veteran family wealth. So he used to defuse these bombs, led teams in consequential environments, walked alongside 700 founders now as they tried to grow without giving away the company. So Jonathan spent 26 years in the U.S. Navy. We won't hold that against him, but a lot of his compadres do. So we'll just put that into the nature work here. He retired as a lieutenant and then turned 16 years of private equity and M&A experience in something that private equity rarely produces, with a soul. So that's kind of the premise we're starting from. Jonathan is coming into this with a mission, with a purpose, and for a higher cause. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to Jonathan Bates. Jonathan, why don't you share a little bit about you and your background here?
Whew, thank you, Paul. And yeah, Trisha, I couldn't agree more. Paul's amazing. Since bringing on him and Jason to help us has been a game changer. And I think, Jason can attest to how much further we've advanced with his help. So yeah, no, it's thank you very much. Like I said, coming out of 26 years of explosive ordnance disposal, I had an amazing career. I was blessed with just having fantastic people around me with bigger vision. And that's what I needed. I was able to have someone sit me down and say, hey, dude, there's something after this, you have to get ready. And I was just had a roadblock of what kind of value do I produce outside of being the bomb squad guy. I mean, anything chemical, nuclear, biological, hostage bombs, IEDs, underwater mines, that sort of thing was what I did. What do I do outside of this? And with that thought in mind, I finally figured out I did have a talent that not everybody had. I could teach a 17-year-old kid how to disarm a nuclear weapon anywhere on Earth with 100% reliability. And you can only do that with really clear mission, vision, values, and systems and processes that apply to new situations. And it turns out that a lot of small businesses didn't have that clarity. And so that's what Paul's saying. I got to help about 685 businesses through that process. And then Traction came out. If you guys have all read Gino Wickman's EOS and Traction, I was like, that's so much better. Do that. But in the meantime, I realized that all those people needed money to grow for inventory and equipment, things like that. So I started helping them get the EIN-based loans that they needed to grow. And in that process, figured out that you could double the size of your business if you bought your competitor, and you could do that within 90 days. And so in the premise of continuing to help businesses grow, I learned about M&A, started doing that, got beat out by a private equity firm. And I was like, what's this private equity thing? Who has a $3.5 million check to hand to somebody? And learned about private equity, did compliance for a couple of funds for a couple of years. Then I retired, and that was the worst 12 months of my life. I committed to 12 months of nothing new. And I don't know if you follow our heart rate variability or anything like that, but I had a higher heart rate variability going to war than I did when I retired. And it was horrible because I believe everybody has a level of stress they're comfortable at. And if you don't intentionally fill that gap between where you're comfortable and where you are with good stress, you're going to unintentionally fill it with bad stress. And so, like I said, I was just not sleeping, not doing really well as a retired person. But in that 12 months, I got to think and put together what we're doing now, which is Patriot Growth Capital. And we change veteran family trees through business today. And so I think that catches us up. What do you think, Paul?
I think that puts us at least into the run here of what we do and why we do it. I know at this point, your company with your team, you look at several companies a day. I've heard a number. I'm not going to repeat it. I'll let you use that number. But the reality is, between all of the AI intentions and things that you've done internally, you have the ability to look at a lot of companies and determine what we can move forward. So that's all the business side of it. But the personal side of it is you're looking for veterans that have skill sets that want to use them somewhere. And you and I have a common friend in Blair Thomas. And one of the comments he made and we've had in our discussions is he came out in the real world with the skill sets that you're mentioning right now, very similar to that. But then he went to get a job and they said, well, you don't have any prior experience. And he said, now, wait a minute. I managed teams of 125 to 500 people at a time. That is management skills. And he said, but that doesn't apply in the business world. Well, a lot of companies look at it that way, but that's not right. If you've got management skills, they can be applied in many different directions, whether it's, just turning a bomb into a rock, or building a company and working beside people to build camaraderie to build a team. And there's where EOS certainly helps that situation. So what you've done is moved it into the personal range. Veterans that have the skills and now are going to have the opportunities. So one of the things when you and I first started talking was, okay, I want to buy a company. Why? Well, I want to buy a company so I can put veterans to work. Why? I want to help them earn the right to own their own company and be part of that and have that as my goal, where we both win. And I said, okay, I've got to know more about these guys. And that combination, along with the efforts that we're doing with the Build Beyond the Uniform Ministry and alt vets, which we'll talk about in a couple of weeks, we'll talk about alt vets entirely, where you've got 16,000 veterans that are involved in the communication and the activities that you as a management team deal with today. So let's just talk about the CEO painkiller list, real world challenges that you tackle, things that are keeping owners, operators, and investors awake at night, besides the third espresso. Let's go into a little bit of what you do when you go out to look for a business. Let's start with that. What are you looking for when you're looking for a business, and what is your ultimate goal once you find one?
Awesome. Thank you. So our ultimate goal is to be able to acquire e-commerce business that's doing between $2 and $10 million a year. But the reason that we're doing that is because, unlike startups or some other kind of investment, when we buy great businesses, then they already have systems and processes and supply chain and leadership and things like that inside of it, which relates a lot more to the veteran and veteran family environment. Nobody is reinventing the wheel for the military. They're fine tuning it. They jump in as a piece of a cog and continue to move the machine. And so that's our ultimate goal. But in order to do that, we have a five eyeball process that we do that. And we are very disciplined with it. The first eyeball that we look at is the financials. And we don't look at anything that doesn't return at least a 20 to 25% IRR for investors. A business has to be able to carry the load that Patriot Growth Capital brings on, because if you buy a business or another private equity firm buys a business, they're not bringing in people that have never had jobs in that business before. So we calculate that in. And then it has to get at least a 1.5 debt service ratio, meaning if the debt service for the business is $1 million, then we have to make at least $1.5 million to be able to handle any fluctuations on top of the returns and the veteran families that we bring in. So that's the first eyeball we look at. If it passes that, great. If not, then it goes away. And like you said, we've looked at over 1,200 businesses in the last 2 years on this piece. It was a lot slower a couple years ago, but thanks to Jason and Jeff and AI, we're able to do what took us a week before in about 12 minutes. And so that first eyeball is much quicker. Jason's looking at 5 to 10 businesses now with us a week to make sure that we're finding those businesses that are able to serve a veteran family, are able to give great returns, and to be able to be financeable. Because the second eyeball that we do is we take that business, we run it through an industry expert. They sit down with us, we look at the business, growth potential, all that sort of thing. They say, hey, this is an awesome business. Lots of low-hanging fruit, because generally the people that we buy from are tired and they want to move on to their next thing, or they're bored, or they're getting ready to retire, or they have some other reason to bring on a team to help take their business to the next level, because this is their blood, sweat, and tears, their babies. And so they're looking for people to help them grow. And so once it passes our industry expert piece, then we go to our institutional partners and we sit down and say, hey, based off these numbers, this is what we see. What do you think? And they give us, a soft commit of like, based off these numbers, we would loan this kind of business or this amount of money to this business. And with that information, I sit down with the sellers and we negotiate an LOI, a letter of intent to buy. And once that's signed, we move on to the fourth eyeball, where we bring in a third party for financial, legal, and operational due diligence to include a quality of earnings study. And we run that through a third party to make sure everything is exactly what we saw. And at the same time the fifth eyeball is going, our institutional partners are running the exact same due diligence on their own. And once it gets through all 5 eyeballs, that's when we close. And when we close, we focus on the transfer of value, because there's a machine that creates this much money that the seller has created. And we want to make sure it continues to make that much money when we bring it over. And after about 6 months that we've planned for transfer of value, we bring in a veteran family. And then we start our practical MBA, which is something I'd love to talk about. Does that answer your question, brother?
It does, and I'm going to take it from kind of the first step. You've approximated, where I wanted to start, and that is a company is trying to figure out what they want to do. The owner has made decisions to do something, and they want to retire, but they don't want their life's work stripped and flipped. So you're coming in on legacy preservation, not flip economics. Many companies buy a company and they have no clue what they have until they get the keys to the door. So what you're talking about is why a company wants to sell. Talk to me about some of the company owners that you've dealt with and their reasons for why they wanted to go on. You've mentioned them briefly already, but kind of expound upon that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. The most important thing for owners on my side is to make sure that they have something that they want to do next. Something is pulling them forward versus being pushed by time or health or some other factor. Because it's important, just like the veterans are transitioning out of one day knowing exactly who they are, who they're doing things with, what's going on, their families are safe, they know where they're going, what they're going to eat, how they're going to get there, how they're going to get back, to literally the very next day, who am I? I can't say that I'm the bomb squad guy anymore. I can't wear the same uniform, go to the same buildings, talk to the same people. Who am I and what is my purpose? Why am I here? And so that actual piece is, for me personally, is super important for sellers to really figure out what's next. And the very happiest sellers are the people that have something that are pulling them forward, and they've started to get ready for that as early as possible, as soon as it crosses their mind, to make sure that they personally are ready, which means that their business is ready so they can comfortably pass that legacy on, hopefully with us, to a veteran family to take care of their customers employees and the rest of their legacy.
Well, you know, one of the things that we do with C-Suite is that we try to work with companies to get them ready for sale. Uh, and as I share every time I'm on this podcast or anytime I'm talking to a potential client, your company's for sale. If not today, a year from today, or 5 years from today, or if something happens to you on the way home tonight, it's the legacy for your family or the estate for your family. So run it like it's for sale. So if you do that, your profitability is going to be much better. You're going to pay attention to a lot more things. And as you mentioned before, traction and EOS is something that we very much participate and practice in. It is a good program. And so from there, I'm trying to kind of go to the other side. Now I'm a veteran. Now, one of the things that I appreciate about a veteran is they have lived with discipline, they survived discipline, and now their life is driven by discipline. And discipline is a factor that is so many times the downfall of either a team member or a team because they don't practice what they preach or they don't do what they know they need to do time after time after time. And it's like, you know, when you're pulling that blue wire versus the red wire, you better darn well know which wire to pull. So if you don't have the disciplines to do that and understand that the consequences are, in your case, very dire, but in their case, potentially going to be a stub toe to a broken leg, they've got to pay attention to that. So kind of taking that precedence, you've already mentioned it. I'll come back to it. I'm a veteran. I've led teams under fire. Now what? How are you going to make me, a disciplined veteran, into a disciplined business owner or manager?
Great question. I believe that all of us, veterans or not, I'm looking through the veteran lens, so I'll speak from that, have the problems that everybody's problems are the same. I would say that 99% of my business problems are personal problems that I kind of brought over. And so, like I said, the more focused and full that I can be personally on driving towards a dream, make sure that I have the clarity to be able to be fully present and engaged with the people that I'm with. And that's our culture actually is what I took away from special operations in every major conflict that we've had that I've been able to support is we think about you so you can think about others. But we could only do that because originally I couldn't have a kid trying to disarm a bomb downrange, worried about his family getting hit by a hurricane. He needs to know that we thought about him. We sent somebody to board his house up and take his family to safety so he can be fully present and engaged here. And how that translates into business is that you need to know that, our first core value is deep relationships with long-term people. We're going to do everything we can for you. And you need to have that confidence deep in your heart so that you can be fully present, engaged with your fellow employees and customers, but more importantly, so that you can be the best version of yourself when you go home, the best uncle, aunt, mom, grandma, neighbor, so that you can pour into the people that matter to you. And that distraction, if you don't have that, brings you down and you can only focus on the inside. So the ability for a business seller, an owner, to be able to prep and make all that possible is to, like I said, focus on what the next step is and then work backwards from there. Because when I'm looking at a business to buy it, that transfer value is super important to me. And everything that detracts from my ability to transfer 100% of the value reduces your price as a business owner. So working with people like you who have the ability to square this away and help them prep, the first risk that I look at for transfer value is how involved the owner is. And because this is your baby, you've put every second of blood, sweat, and tears the entire time you've owned it into this business. And the ability to help step back, like you said, the business actually becomes more valuable. Because when you sell me the business and you go away, all of the institutional value that you have, all the institutional knowledge, all the relationships, that sort of thing goes with you. And so the sooner that you can get on a program with Paul and C-Suite to be able to transition yourself out, you'll be able to realize what and work on and accomplish the dreams that you've been setting for yourself, as well as increase the value for when somebody like us comes in to be able to help transfer that legacy to a veteran family. Does that answer your question, Paul?
It does, and it falls right into, when we're trying to work with a company, one of the first things we're looking is what you just said. Where is the involvement? How much involvement? And it's referred to affectionately as the Switzerland effect. What are the things in your company that will have it survive or fail that are totally focused on one area, one thing, one person? Because if that one area, thing, or person, concentration, whatever it might be, is in a position to fail, the company's in a position to fail. So the first effort is succession plan. As you mentioned a minute ago, if the owner does everything, then nobody can do it when he's gone. So he needs to get a group that can pass, can follow in, be behind, as well as the other issues of concentration. If they've got 90% of their business, and maybe that's a high number, but even 60% of their business in one client, diversify. Let's figure out what we've got to do to spread that to other clients so that if we lost a client, it would be devastating, but it wouldn't put us out of business. So those are the things we concentrate on. I'm going to carry this a little bit further into the conversations we had to finish that off. In our discussions, you said, okay, we get the company, then we're going to be vetting out the veterans the veteran families and people that we're looking for. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know where they're coming from. They've run a group. They know how to manage, but they don't know this business. And as you shared with me, you're not going to put them into that business to run it day one. You're going to bring them in with your management team platform. You're going to keep your management team platform as you have them do everything from carrying out the trash to cleaning the bathrooms to figuring out how the computer turns on to how the company runs, who the people are, and et cetera. And that might take 2 or 3 years. They're going to be paid. They're going to be employees. They're going to be part of the company, but they're going to grow with that company. And I'm quoting you, so you're going to stop me when I misquote, but you're going to take them through that infancy stage into the adolescent before you turn them loose as a young adult. Let's put it that way. And then there is an ultimate payback that's for them and for you. Why don't you go into that? Now, first, what I said, is that accurate? And then second, where does it go to?
That's great. Thank you. So not everybody needs to or wants to be a business owner. Being a leader inside of the military transitions perfectly to being a leader inside of another organization. And so there's a couple of steps there that you're talking about. We mentioned it earlier, advancing the line for veterans at atlvets.org. The 16,000 people we served with last year alone. We should be 3 years old here shortly, and we've served about 30,000 people through the lifetime of ATL Vets. We're advancing the line for veterans. We're in 7 states, 12 cities. We do 8 to 12 events a month. And that is actually the top of our funnel of how we recruit veteran families for the businesses that we bring in. Because Patriot Growth Capital does 3 things, and ATL Vets is part of the first one, the advancing line for veterans. It is the first thing that we do is reality checks. And so Zach Knight runs that, and he's done an amazing job. I don't know where he gets the energy, but he brings big business, regular business, and veteran families together to compare realities. Everybody's been driven past that house and been like, man, I wonder what that person does. Zach brings the opportunity for everybody to say, wow, that's another reality, not mine. Maybe I should change what I do to match that reality. It took me about 35 years to realize that I could be a business owner because my dad had 3 jobs. We moved out around every couple months. I joined the military at a high school. Owning a business is something that Paul and Trisha and Sheila and Manisha do, not me. That's okay. It's just not my reality. But what he does is bring that ability for them to say, I can change what I do to actually create a new reality for my family. And that's the first thing we do through Advancing Line for Veterans at atlvets.org. The second thing that we do at Patriot Growth Capital is money. So what you're saying right now is, like I said, we actually bring the 5i process to bear. And then once it's rolling, we work with our institutional partners, our accredited investors, the family offices, our own personal money to buy the businesses 100%. Because the average family in America is like, man, where am I supposed to get millions of dollars to buy a business? And even if I had that, what does a good business even look like? And so we solve that problem with the really tight buy box that we talked about earlier. Then the third thing we do, which comes back to what you're talking about, is a practical MBA. When somebody has gone through the top of the funnel at Advanced Line for Veterans and sat down with us and done our initial processing, which is very tight. We have less than 1% of people that actually apply to be a practical MBA participant actually finish the process because it's so hard. And we do that intentionally because everybody is investing millions of dollars into this business, and the veteran families need to be able to invest in themselves. And if that's not what they want, it doesn't help them accomplish their dreams, then we want them to go do that. And so we help them work through that process. But once they're in, you're right, we bring them on as a W-2. They're paid a 6-figure salary for a 60-month program where the first 2 years are just focused on systems and processes and language of this particular business. Because, man, there's 2 psychological problems that I had getting out of the military for being a business owner that the W-2 position actually solves for them. One is I was scared. Who am I to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar business? Well, that's the right fear. You're probably not ready for that. You have the leadership experience, but business is different. You need some extra skills. You can go to Harvard for 60 months, pay 6 figures, and then have to still figure out what you want to do when you grow up. But our practical MBA is the opposite of that. We're paying you 6 figures. You come in not as the CEO, not as the person who's in charge of the growth plan, but just to learn and get paid and grow inside your knowledge of that business. And that solves that first fear. I don't need to be the CEO. I can actually just be part of this and really see if business ownership or business in period is what I want, or even if this business is for me, because there's so many cool things to do out there. The second 2 years in our practical MBA are teaching people more strategy so they learn how to work on the business, not in the business, which is the first 2-year focus. Then the last year, we tie it all up with a bow, because at 40 hours a week for 60 months, you now have over 10,000 hours of experience in the business that you knew we wanted you to own a piece of from day one. So you can step confidently into business ownership, which helps us overcome the second psychological fear, which is imagine coming home to your wife or your husband and saying, hey, I just personally guaranteed millions of dollars to buy this business. Well, I can tell you that my wife at first was like, we're going to live in a van down by the river. What? You don't have any experience in this. And so it actually helps solve a relationship problem as well. And the whole family gets to be comfortable because you're transitioning from your job into a new job, but with a different focus at the end, with ownership. And then we facilitate at the end. We have 3 methods to make sure that that family can confidently step into business ownership because we've poured into them physically, mentally, and spiritually for 5 years to make sure that they're not lottery winners, to make sure they're fishermen, and that they're ready to actually be able to handle a larger income stream that's repeatable, that's never been in their family before. So does that answer your question, brother?
It does. And, you and I have had the pleasure of talking through this. And I'm going to share with you something that Jason shared with me that even before I met you. When we started doing some CFO work for you, Jason's the one that stepped in first. And he called me up one afternoon. He said, Paul, I want to introduce you to these guys. He said, they have integrity. They have our values. They're people that I want to know, and I think you want to know. And so I think it was the next day I reached out to try to get a hold of you, and did get a hold of you. And then ultimately Zach and the team. And, his comment is your values parallel ours. And I hope you take that as a compliment, because I think our values are very, very high, and we want to keep that integrity value always. So when you meet someone like that, it's like Tricia. When I met Tricia and I got into the opportunity of meeting some of the upper echelon people with C-Suite Network, uh, their values parallel our values very strongly. So that's why you and I have been having some of our recent conversations of how can the Veterans Group and C-Suite Network have some activity and plans together that can help both areas, with the ultimate goal being helping veterans and veteran families. So you've just touched upon all of it, but I wanted to share that with you. So,
Thank you, Jason, for being patient with us, brother.
patience comes in everywhere. And then you introduce us to Jeff. Mercy. Sheila can kind of step into that one between our opportunities of talking with Jeff and his knowledge and AI development and things that we've been doing has taken our company very quickly into the AI world very strongly. So we appreciate that. And Sheila and I are working with him to take this to something we're going to be going back with C-Suite Network, or already are. And at that point, put something into the mainstream that helps everybody. But we're going to try to lead that with the Veterans Group. So I bring that around, and talk about how, okay, you mentioned it a minute ago. I want to growth capital. How do I not torch my personal credit, and how do I get credit? How do I do this? What does growth? What do you guys do that bring everybody to a comfort level here, to where that family is taken care of? They know where they're going, and then the one thing that you haven't mentioned before is, after you build that value, you've said it, that they have ownership in it. Let's talk about the kind of ownership they have, and if the second bite of that apple for them is potentially a company sale to where they have personal, a legacy that comes out of it, or they buy out everything and it's all theirs, etc. Go into what happens after.
That's the most exciting part. Our second core value is doing well by doing good. We believe that making money and doing good are not mutually exclusive. I believe that it's our responsibility to do that. My favorite parable is, of the talons, and nobody's happy when you came back with less than you were given. And in order to make sure that we are filling people's cups, our job is to help you have an overflowing cup, so when you see a need in the world, you'll be able to meet it. But how do we do that on like big boy and big girl private equity, make good returns and do the good that we want to do? So, great question. Obviously, the 5I process that we talked about helps us choose businesses, like I said, that do between $2 and $10 million in profit a year. And generally, for instance, the company that we're working on right now, it's doing 5 million-ish, a little more actually, in profit. And we're going to pay about $41 million for it. But it's grown 1,500% in the last 3 years, and it's already grown 30% quarter over quarter this year. And it has a great tailwind in the peptide and wellness industry. Now, that company is so big that how we do that is we bring in really high quality, horsepower driven leadership that can take that company from where we are today to the over $100 million valuation, which is our goal in the next 5 years. I mean, it's already, like I said, grown a lot, but just off of a 10% conservative growth rate, we'll be able to get it to the $100 million valuation in 5 years. But that's the key, is to bring in the right leadership for it, which comes back to your question of, what is this veteran family going to own? And what do they do inside of this business? Well, a concept that blew my mind when somebody smarter than me sat me down, he's like, hey, who are the 3 richest people that you can think of? I'm like, I don't know, Elon, Bezos, Warren Buffett. He's like, yeah. Elon owns, like, at the time, like 19% of Tesla, and Bezos owned 11% of Amazon, and Warren Buffett owned none of the companies 100%. He's like, all right, so think about the top, Forbes 400. Well, a lot of those people in that category have real estate in their portfolio, and some other, maybe they inherited it, but 100% of them have businesses in their portfolio. And Jonathan, do you think you're smarter than these people? And I was like, obviously not. He's like, why do you want to own 100% of just one company? And that concept blew my mind. I was like, man, if the smartest people on earth are creating the most wealth, which means they're creating the most job and the most value, they're coming back with more than they were given, then that's probably a concept that we should share. And so that's what private equity is based on, is helping other people's money come together to create value. And so how does a veteran family fit into this? Well, when they come in as a W-2, like I said, we've solved a couple of problems for themselves personally and their family, psychologically, to be able to help. And then we're training them to help confidently become a business owner. But business ownership and position in a company are not mutually exclusive. You don't have to be the CEO to be an owner. You could be a janitor and be an owner and still benefit monetarily from that business. And so obviously we're doing internet-based businesses. They're not going to be a janitor, but that concept is the same. We're going to find a position in the business where they are creating value, where they feel super excited about what they're doing. And that's all we need. It could be the CEO. It could be another position inside the business, and that's great. But what we have at the goal at the end is to transfer a piece of that company into that family so they can have a repeatable income. And we have 3 methods to do that. The first one is obviously we would love cash or an SBA loan, depending on the size of the company. But what the veteran family doesn't have to do is negotiate like we did before. We already know we're doing seller's notes. We're doing all kinds of things to make sure that this family has that happen. Then the second option is an ESOP. There's all kinds of cool ways that are institutionally there for us to be able to make sure that that family can get a piece of that income stream and profit from the business. And the last one is just straight up seller's note. If we're going to do what we need to do to make sure that that family has an income stream. And so obviously we run through those options as appropriate. For instance, the company that we're working on right now has a 25% IRR for the investors, a 3x MOIC, which is return on the capital that you are investing. But we'll be able to fit 2 families into that business from day one. And so it's probably looking more like an ESOP. But we plan on that from day one. This is how we do it. And when we acquire those companies, Patriot Growth Capital owns the majority, and we sell a piece of the company to family offices and individual investors and other investment groups for a couple of different reasons. One, it meets our core values of doing well by doing good and deep relationships. We bring more families into the atmosphere of that veteran family, so they can learn from other people as well and see what other realities are to help move them towards the ability to be an owner. And then we have a liquidity event for the investors, which happens after the 5-year time frame, because for investors, we focus on the ability to use qualified small business stock, or the section 1202 exemption in the IRS code, which when you hold an investment that's properly run, is inside C Corp, meets all the requirements for you in the federal government, at the end of 60 months, you get $15 million, or 10 times your initial investment back, capital gains tax free. And that's one of the reasons we have a 60-month training cycle for veteran families, so that when they're ready to step into ownership, we can have a liquidity event for the people that want to take advantage of that at that time. And then Patriot Growth Capital continues to be the majority owner and partner of that business to help keep it growing, where we continue to get to use all the tools of private equity, roll-ups and efficiencies to grow that business. But now we have a veteran family who's benefiting from that as well. And does that answer your question, brother? They own a piece of it.
That was in you. The next question I was going to talk to you about, which I think is very important. It comes up in almost every conversation, of how do you build culture around the discipline and accountability without sounding like a bumper sticker. Well, you shared many of the aspects of what you do to build that culture, because if you run the company sloppy, I mean, it's like when you were in the service. If you were sloppy, you didn't get a second chance. It's like, whoops, no do-overs. So in a business situation, you don't want to be in a whoops, no do-over. So getting that company culture, I don't know how much you want to expand upon that, but you've touched on it very heavily about the disciplines, the merchandise process that you do, the product process you do, and more importantly, the people process you do. So those are the kind of things that I think has legacy and takes it further from there. So at this point, I'm going to actually turn this around to some questions out there and talk to some of the guys on the call here that we have and open it up to where they can give you a hard time. You know, our producer kept cutting me off so I couldn't break into you to give you the hard time I thought I was going to, Jonathan. That's probably a benefit to the total podcast because typically I do break in, but I didn't need to. You handled that beautifully. So, Jason, what kind of questions do you have for Jonathan here? Oh, first thing I need to do is ask when I talk to Jason, make sure he's there. Jason, what kind of question? Unmute and go from there.
Yeah, I'm ready.
What kind of questions do you have for this young man that has a similar hairstyle that you do?
Yeah, Jonathan and I share a lot of characteristics, handsomely characteristics, I might add.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway, Jonathan, working with you guys the last several months, I think I've noticed the precision that you guys have in regards to the um, what you're looking for, kind of your minimum requirements for a business. An IRR, DSCR. Um, Can you explain why that's important to you guys? A lot of people don't understand, why you might have those requirements, but it might be good to explain why you guys have those in place.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. So you've seen the discipline that we have, the current business that we are working on closing right now. We got outbid by somebody else. And it was because you did a great job of showing me the exact value that met the exact criteria that we have. We looked at over 1,200 businesses. And this is the best business that I've seen in those 1,200, hands down. I don't know about your opinion of it, but it is so important to make sure that we stick to our buy box because we're here to serve veteran families. That's our purpose, changing veteran family trees through business. And you've heard about how we do that. But because of our core values, the deep relationship with long-term people, the doing well by doing good, and the A player only value, everybody who invests with us needs to get what we talked about. And so with you and Jeff and our new AI that's running fantastically, we are able to see that picture through the entire 5 and then 10 and 15-year ownership that we're looking at at the Patriot Growth Capital, because we're long-term into this Berkshire Hathaway patient style. And just like them, like you said, you've seen me actually say, hey, I'm not raising my bid. I'm going to pray that you guys have a successful closing. Let me know if anything changes. And it came back around because they changed the deal on the seller. And she wanted the culture that we have. But having that precision and the ability to stick to the discipline and not be tempted, because as you know, I love this business. But I had to let it go because it didn't fit into our buy box, because it wasn't going to serve the families the way we wanted at that price, and it wasn't going to serve the investors the way we wanted at that price. So the ability to have the DSCR and the IRR on top of the load that we create with a veteran family is a non-starter if it doesn't meet those requirements, because then it won't serve our purpose and core values. Does that answer your question, brother?
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's not just there to be there; it's there to benefit the investors, the return that you want for the investors, as well as your veteran families that are eventually going to run it. So, yeah, it was interesting because, to Jonathan's point, they had backed out. This is one of the most amazing deals, honestly, I've almost ever seen. Just the return, the company, low employees, a lot of upside, and he turned it down because it didn't fit in the box. And then they came back around, like he said, and it fit in the box. So he grabbed it, and here we are, full steam ahead.
Sheila, do you have any questions? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan. Didn't mean to
I
interrupt.
was just saying, I'm so excited, but it wouldn't have been possible without Jason helping to clarify those numbers for me.
Appreciate it,
Well,
brother.
that's good. That's what we hope to do for everybody that we work with, under the same guideline, same premise, that we want to do the right thing for the right reason. Sheila, what kind of questions do you have for this young man?
Jonathan, what are you looking for in that veteran family? Because I would guess that it's not just a blank check. It is about making sure that they have the right mindset. So what are you looking for? Where do you find them, and how can we help?
Thank you, Sheila. That is our purpose. So this is the most critical plate that we spin. And having people be involved into the Advancing for Line for Veterans program helps us filter this down. So anybody that, the events don't cost anything or anything like that. Please, anybody who wants to come around and come and be with people that are of a like mindset to help you grow and advance personally, then you're welcome to everything that we do. The cool thing about it is that we are filtering for people who want to invest in themselves, people who have a very clear vision. It doesn't have to be perfect, because I believe that everybody's this close to what they want if they can define it. And so the first 3 steps that we go through to apply even for the practical MBA is, number 1, we go through a dream list. And that is so scary. It takes so much heart and brain and soul sweat to be able to say what is good for you. Because one of the reasons that I lose about 4 people a year to different things, but a lot of times the bomb squad guys like to hurt themselves. For some reason, we're the highest rate of suicide in the military. But I believe that when life slaps you and transitioning out of the military, and I believe, like I said, it applies to everybody, sports CEOs, business owners, transitioning removes that purpose, and it creates isolation, because you've just won. You've had a great career. You've made a lot of money. But who am I? Why am I here? And why am I feeling empty? That is a question that you sound like you're whining internally. So you can't talk about it with your wife or husband. You can't talk about it with your best friend. You can't talk about it with your kids. You can't talk about it with the people you just worked with. And it creates this isolation. And I believe that that's where, when you get slapped like that, you just keep falling. I call it feeling the feels. You just keep falling. And without this platform, this foundation of hope and goodness that you've defined for yourself, you just keep falling. And so we help. That first step is to just define what is good out there for you. And we back that up so that when you can land on this foundation, pick yourself up, realize that there's something good out there that you've said it was good. I didn't tell you it was good. And then you can pick one of those dreams up and make it a goal or a commitment and start working towards that. That's the first thing that we do. The second thing that we do is, in that process, is do a family vision. I have some dreams now. 5 years from now, my family is going to be this age and this spot in life, and I want to do these things with them, which means I have a very clear picture of where I want to be, and I can work backwards from there, because I'm going to need this much money and this much time to be able to do those things with my family. The reason that we do that is because we want to make sure that the practical MBA and working with Patriot Growth Capital is such a big, clear, vivid picture of what we want for you that you can see it exactly as a stepping stone inside what you want for yourself and your family, so that you can be fully committed when you come with us. We're investing millions of dollars. There's no side gigs. We want you to be the best version of you. And so, does that answer your question on why we start with something? Less than 1% of people that apply finish that.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about where you've been and what you're doing with AL Vets, and how that comes in, and just summarizing that. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tricia to ask some questions and close this out. Tell us about AL Vets and how it partnerships with Patriot Growth.
Man, Advance in Line for Veterans is the cornerstone. Zach was the first person that I invited on the team when we put Patriot Growth Capital together, because it's our purpose, changing veteran family trees through business. I don't know enough veterans. Yeah, I got out, but I mean, just like high school, I mean, how many people do you guys talk to? I needed to make sure that we had a filter, a machine that brought the best people together, the people that want to grow, the people that can make a decision and move forward. And Zach Knight has built ATL Vets, Advancing Life for Veterans, at atlvet.org. And that's what he does. Like I said, 30,000 people have come in with the intention of improving themselves. Because what he does is not just building businesses. He's, in fact, gotten grants from Congress to continue his workforce development, which for us, we call entrepreneurship. You should be super proud if you're creating value inside of another company, if that meets what you want and creates the kind of lifestyle that you want for you and your family. There's no shame in that. Having $100,000 or $200,000 business, income from a W-2 is the same as having $1 million or $2 million business with a 10% net margin, with none of the hassles. So there should be no shame in being an entrepreneur. And Zach helps build that with workforce development. And then the entrepreneurship. Some people have great ideas and they want to hammer them out. Awesome. That's what the program's there for. And some people want to work inside of another system and become a business owner that way. And that's why we've joined with Advanced in Line for Veterans to be the top of the funnel for the Practical MBA, so that we can find the people who meet our core values, who are super dedicated, and they want to work with a rock star team to be able to build great businesses into bigger businesses. Does that answer your question, brother?
It certainly does. So Tricia, you know what we're trying to do here. I'm going to turn it to you for you to ask this young man some questions.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you so much for your service, Jonathan, and also the continued service. I cannot help. It's just ringing in my ears. And I had the honor of meeting with you, with Paul and Blair a little while ago. And the power of being mission driven, delivering success, there's just no underestimating how much value that provides, how much purpose, and it's everything. The very first thing out of your mouth today was mission, vision, values, and that is everything to me in terms of how we do what we do, why we do what we do, how we're inspired when we have our, I'm sorry, I'll be rude a little bit, Paul, but when we have our asses handed to us, I think when you're talking to someone from the military, you can use that kind of language, because sometimes it happens, and it does in business too. But ringing in my ears, and I might have shared this when we spoke last, but I gave a keynote in Dallas, and afterward there was a little dinner, or a little luncheon. Sorry, everybody kind of talking and sharing, and it came to this sort of everybody out do-gooding each other on what they do for the veteran or the military community, and there was only one veteran at the table, and I believe he was from Mission 22. And when it came around to me, I just felt this overwhelming, like, we have a veteran at the table. How the hell would I know what serves when I'm not a veteran? And I asked, what would you say? And I will never forget this, because he said, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, but listen, we're very capable. We're the most capable in the world. All we need is for you to tell us what the game is, how to win it, and what are the tools we need to be able to win it. And then let us go, let us go do it. And every time you speak, all I can think of is, here is this amazing way of setting out, this is the game, this is how you win it, and these are the tools you need to make that transition. And so I'd love for you to share just a little bit of that mission, purpose, vision, and how it fulfills you and fulfills as you're seeing that live out. Because, oh my goodness, the mission you're on, we're all so proud to be connected with, and we're working on different things that we can be doing. But I'd love for you to share a little bit of that.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. man, I mean, Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan without the rules of basketball and having a ref and a coach. I mean, he's the best on earth. GOAT. So how can we provide that? Every single thing that we do in Patriot Growth Capital is available to every American. That was one of my premises that I wanted to build on while I was retired, and it sucked. I hated being retired. Was this has to be something that all of us can do. Like I said, I'm just looking through the veteran family lens, but everybody has the opportunity to do what we do. The 1202 exemption, the qualified small business stock, everybody can do that. Buying a business, using an SBA loan or bigger financing, everybody can do that. Bringing in bigger people better than you. Once you admit that, everybody can do that. And so putting all these things together to make sure that the veteran family actually has a defined win for them, which is why we start with dreams and family vision. You've told me what the goal is. I've given you the game. I'm giving you the rules. What we do is hard and painful. Running a business is sometimes unbelievably scary. You just cannot make up real life. And it's going to happen. What can we do to shrink down the blood, sweat, and tears? Well, we're building on a foundation of people that have already created something successful. We're bringing together people with the same purpose, with full knowledge from the intent that you're going to own a piece of this. But the people that are actually running the things, you get to learn from the best. And so what have we created? We know it's hard. We know it's painful. We can't make it less hard, but as a group, we can make it less painful.
And normal.
Yeah. And
I mean, you dismantled bombs. If you can make that normal, you can make the blood, sweat, and tears of building a business and seeing it scale normal.
Yeah. I mean, I needed to dismantle bombs. The reason that I love what we do is because for 26 years, I volunteered to let somebody kill me any way they wanted, anywhere they wanted, with no rules. And as long as I got to stay within my core values and my purpose, I got to beat them any way I wanted, with whatever I wanted, with only those rules. And that's why I said my stress level was up here that I was comfortable with. And my stress level, as soon as I jump back in, when I filled it with good, is back there. I'm excited every day, just like I was. This is the most equivalent thing that I could find to having something be as fluid and as challenging as possible. And I love hard things. I love painful things. Ask Jason. But this is the opportunity that we're creating for the people that want that challenge, because people are growing bigger businesses. I mean, less than 3% of businesses in America make over $1 million in revenue a year. We're starting with businesses that are making over $2 million in profit. We're jumping to the next level. We're taking hard as possible, but we're doing it as a group. So it's as just a slightly little bit less painful, but we get to persevere together. And I don't know if that answers your question, but it fires me up.
It does, Jonathan, and it's so exciting. And I know we're at time, but oh my goodness, that is everything that is great about business and the transferability in terms of our veteran community. It's just so incredible to have that spelled out and have that practicality. Paul, I can't believe we're out of time already. Thank you so much, Jonathan, Paul, everybody here, of course, Jason, Sheila, Manisha, and Jacob. What an incredible conversation. And I can't wait. I know there's so much more that we're going to be sharing. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you,
Tricia. Now you know why I wanted to bring Jonathan and Zach to your attention and see if there's something that could be greater than us individually.